Hey everyone, happy Friday and good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in this world. My name is Rakesh Gupta and I'm co-host of Automation Hour with Mr. Hansen. So if you're joining first time, this is the logistics. All line will be muted. Please post your question, then go to webinar chat or Salesforce Automation Hour, a group in the Trailblazer community, where we are going to post the recording on our YouTube channel. So feel free to subscribe. We are pretty packed for the second quarter of 2022. But if you have any use case and you want to share with Ohana, please reach out to me or Michelle, and we are happy to have you. Recently, I started Salesforce Flow office hours, which runs every Saturday 10 to 10:30 Central. If you have any questions related to Flow, feel free to join. I will drop a link in the chat section of GoToWebinar. We are very, very thankful to our sponsor, Active Campaign and Concrete IO. Without their help, it was not possible to run these sessions from last 6 years. And here is your co-host, Michelle, and myself. With that said, I am going to hand over this session to Jeff, and Jeff is very well known in Salesforce Flow and Salesforce ecosystem. So Jeff, to you, sir.
Well, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. So how do I take control of the slides here? I haven't used GoToWebinar in a long time.
Now go ahead and try.
There we go. There we go. Can you see my screen?
100% yes.
All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and go to this and go presentation mode and do this. There we go. Okay, hi folks. So that's me here. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for, I don't know, 12 years, something like that. I've been a partner and instructor. I've done a lot of implementations. I work mostly with small companies. I like working with small companies. We have a lot of those in Ohio. And so I like working with small companies. I do professional edition sometimes. A lot of people haven't seen professional edition, but it does a lot now. So that's a little background on me. So here's our agenda today. I'm going to talk about the roadmap a little bit. Most people have probably seen what's going on, but let's talk about that because that's a very important thing. It is going to be a very busy year for system admins or developers, because this coming year, you're going to be converting workflows and processes to flows. So we're going to talk about we're going to do a screen flow today. We're going to also do a scheduled trigger flow. We'll do both of those. So if you are going to do these exercises, get your orgs fired up. If you got a developer org or a sandbox that you're going to work in today, because we're going to create them. I'm going to go step by step in here. You can create them in your org and you'll have it then, everything we're going to do. So we're going to talk about a business challenge here, why we're doing this, why we're going to be creating what we're creating today. We're going to create the flow along the way, actually 2 of them, and ask questions along the way. Michelle's going to be answering the questions in the chat window as we go. All right, so here's the automation roadmap. This is what Salesforce has announced. Workflow, process builder, no further development. In the Spring 22 release, if you've looked in there, there is a migration tool in there now in the Spring 22 release to convert workflows to flows. And so we're not going to have any more workflows that are going to be created in Winter 23, which comes up in October timeframe. So it's something to remember a little bit that workflow and approval processes are the same code base. And approval processes are not going away. I haven't seen any announcements on Salesforce's part as to the future of approval processes. I don't think they'll go away, because if you look at even a fairly simple approval process, for you to replicate that in Flow, a lot of work. So I haven't seen anything on approval processes, but I would imagine it's going to be around for a while. Process Builder, Summer 22 release, we get a migration tool. So June, and then no more new processes can be created after Winter 23 in October. Process Builder and Flow are the same code base. Everything is moving to Flow, all further development. And note, since workflow runs in system mode, when they convert to flows, some can break. So this isn't going to be a plug and play thing. I mean, how many times in the software industry do we really get plug and play? It's not like that. I have all kinds of questions as to how some of these workflows and process builders are going to convert. I've got a process builder that I did for a customer a while ago. It's got 44 criteria nodes on it, 44. So when it converts, is it going to have one decision element with 44 branches? Is it going to have 44 decision elements? I don't know. I don't know. This is going to be a very, very busy year for people that are responsible for this. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're doing this is, since workflows run in system mode, particularly, you got to keep in mind whether what you're going to create in flow is going to run in user or system context. And if you pick show advanced when you're saving the flow, and you pick user or system context, depends on how flow is launched, then if you use a custom button or link, it's going to be in user context. Process builder or scheduled flows are system context. If you pick system context with sharing enforces record level access, it's going to respect OWD, roles, sharing rules, all of that stuff. It doesn't respect object permissions, field level security, or other permissions of the running user. And then you can pick system context without sharing, access all data. That's roughly equivalent to how workflow runs now, pretty much, and process builder. So this is something you have to keep in mind when you go down the path of converting all these workflows and processes. And there's a lot of them out there. And this is the right time to learn flow. It really is, but you got to put some work into it. Rakesh and I were talking a while back, you know, it's one thing to learn workflow or process builder. You can learn that fairly quickly. It's a lot more effort to learn flow. This is my estimate here. This is not based on anything I've read. I would say that in general, learning flow well will take you about 30 to 40% of the time that it would take to learn Apex. 30 or 40% would be my guess. It's not something you're going to learn in a day or a week or maybe even a month. It's going to require some work, but the benefits are high. There's a whole bunch of Apex that's out there right now in customer orgs that can be replaced with flow. Salesforce pegged that number about a year and a half ago. I saw something online that Salesforce estimated that 60% of Apex that was in customer orgs could be replaced with flow. So that number's probably gone up since we got the capability to kick off a flow when a record is deleted. That's probably even gone up. So we're going to talk about a screen flow today. Here's a basic, you know, you've seen this on screen flows. If you use this, you've got the next, the previous, if you do display those buttons on there, or like our case, we're going to use a hidden screen. We're going to hide a screen. So why would we want to do that? Well, there's no user interaction. And when you display a screen flow on a Lightning record page, it's always running. So if it's a hidden screen, it's always running. You just don't realize it. It's running in the background, but it can do things for you. It runs upon record page view. When you look at the record, it's going to run. And even though you don't see it, it's running in the background. And that's what we're going to do today. So here's our business requirement. Acme Explosives has recently implemented Salesforce. They're struggling with user adoption. Familiar story, huh? Since our sales team continues to use Excel files to track opportunities. They initially reviewed logins as a measurement of user adoption, which a lot of Salesforce customers do. They look at logins, they pull up reports of logins to make a determination as to how much the users are using Salesforce. But that's not really effective. If somebody really knows Salesforce, what I'd do, and if I still wanted to manage my sales, let's say, off of an Excel spreadsheet, I'd log into Salesforce at 7 o'clock every morning. Then I go play golf. And the management would be looking up the reports and saying, man, that Jeff, I wish everybody used Salesforce like he did. So it's an imperfect tool to look at logins as a measurement of user adoption. You can do other things. They should be creating records in there. And certainly you can pull up standard reports that show you whether or not they're creating records. But what we're going to do is management has requested to be able to track opportunity record views. Are they even looking at opportunity records in there? If they're not looking at records in there, they can't be doing too much in there. So there are apps on the App Exchange that do this. You know, there's heavily regulated industries, banking, government, that use apps to do this. But we're going to accomplish this with a hidden screen flow. That's what we're going to do here. And this is what the flow is going to look like. It's not a really complicated flow. We're going to create a custom object that we're going to need to hold these records. We're going to call it track page views with a couple fields on it. And then we're going to leverage a blank screen in this thing to do this. All right, so get your orgs ready to go, and we'll go through this whole thing. You can create this in your own orgs. So here's my org, just a regular developer org that I've got that I'm going to do this. So the first thing that we need to do to create this is we need a custom object for these page views. So let's go to Setup. Let's go to Object Manager. And let's click the Create drop down in the upper right and go to Custom Object. Okay, we're going to call the label on this thing Track Page View. And the plural we're going to give this thing is Track Page Views, curiously enough. Okay, we'll go down the page a little bit here. Let's change the record name to Track Page View Number, because we're going to use an auto number here. We'll change the data type to auto number. And I'm going to use the format on this thing of page view dash, and then in the curly braces, 0000. So the very first one created will be page view dash 0001. By the way, you could put 10 in here. And it doesn't mean that you can only create 9 of them. It'll keep going. It's just that if you put 10 in here, the first one would be page view dash 1. So put starting number of 1. All right, we're going to select allow reports. And, you know, this is a very misunderstood checkbox on here. If you don't click this, you can still create reports. You just got to use custom report types. All that happens if I click this thing is the moment I create this object, in the standard report types, I have a standard report type called track page views. That's all that means here to do that. So we're going to go ahead and allow reports on this thing. Let's go down the page some. We're going to leave it deployed. I'm going to allow search on this thing. And then let's select the Launch New Custom Tab Wizard. Let's get a tab for this thing. Let's click Save at that point. And let's do the lookup on tab style. By the way, you can download hundreds of these off the App Exchange. I'm going to use the measuring tape on here. Let's go to measuring tape and use that. And then go next. We'll leave default on for all the profiles. Regular org, we'd probably do it differently. I'm going to leave it on all the apps right now. Wouldn't do that in a regular org. That's way too many apps, by the way. It's really confusing. If you're working on user adoption, they should only see maybe 2 or 3 apps, and then save it. Okay, so now we're going to create some fields on here. Let's click on Fields and Relationships, and then New. All right, the first one is going to be a lookup relationship, and then select Next. Okay, we're going to relate this one to the user object. So go down and pick the user object, and then select Next. Well, field label we'll leave as user on here. Field name auto-populates. Let's just select Next here. Real org, we put a description. Always put a description and the help text in there 99% of the time, by the way. Because a year from now, you look at this and you go, why did we create that field? Well, if I put a description in there and say, this was created per request from management, I know why I did it. Let's just make it read edit for all of them. I click invisible at the top and then select Next. Leave it on the page layout and select Save and New. We got, I think, 2 more to go here. Okay, we're going to do another lookup here. Data type is lookup, and go Next. We're going to relate this one to the opportunity object, and then select Next. We'll leave the field label and the name as opportunity on there. No problem there. Let's select next. And make it, click visible at the top to make it read it for everybody and select next. And we'll leave it on the layout and select next. Leave it on all the opportunity page layouts for now and select save and new. Okay, the last one is going to be a date time field. This is going to be the date and time that they actually look at the opportunity record. So date time, select next. We're going to call this date and time viewed. Date and time viewed. Click in the field name to auto-populate that. We'll just leave the rest of it as is. Select next. We'll make it visible again for all profiles. Select next. And then save that thing. Leave it on the page layout and save it. Okay, so that takes care of the custom object that we need. So let's go ahead and modify the opportunity page layout. So let's select page layouts while we're looking at this, while we're, oh, excuse me, go to the object manager and then go to opportunity. We're still on the track page. So go to the opportunity object in the object manager and then go to page layouts. All right, let's select the opportunity layout on here. And let's go down to the bottom of the related list. There's our track page views. Drag that sucker all the way up to the top. So we don't have to hunt for this thing. Let's put it all the way up to the top of the related lists. And then let's click the little wrench on here. We need to display those fields on here. So we're going to click on the date and time viewed. We're going to get the user and move those over to the right. So we've got any others that we want in here? No. That'll do it. And then let's sort by, down below there, let's sort by date and time viewed descending. That way we're going to see the latest one first on there. Date and time viewed descending. And then select OK. And then save the page layout. And say yes to overwrite. Okay, all the pre-work is done. Let's go to flows. Let's select the setup. And in our quick find, let's put in flow. And let's go to flows. All right, and then new flow. Okay, we're going to select a screen flow here. And then select create. Okay, the first thing we're going to need here, we're going to need the RecordId variable. In Salesforce, when you're looking at a Lightning record page, if you want to pass the ID of that record into flow, there's a standard API name called RecordId. So but we have to stipulate it here. So select new resource, upper left. And the resource type is going to be a variable. Now the API name has to be exact. Lowercase, spell out the word record, capital I, uppercase I, and D. RecordId, all one word, with the I in uppercase, everything else in lowercase. The data type below is going to be text. We don't have to worry about multiple values here. That's not what we're doing here. And we have to make it available for input. This is coming into the flow from outside the flow. Available for output would mean that it's leaving this flow. That's the way to look at this. Always look at flows as inputs and outputs to the elements. And when you're troubleshooting flows and you look at an element, the questions you ask are, what should be the input to this element and what should be the output of the element? It's like troubleshooting an electronic circuit. Okay, so we got to say available for input and then select done. Okay, now let's select the plus sign underneath the start element and let's get a create records element. Go down to create records. Okay, our label for this is going to be create track page view. Create track page view. API name would auto-populate. In real org, we're going to put a description in here. I won't worry about it here. How many records to create? 1. How to set the record fields. Let's select use separate resources and literal values. Okay, now click into the object below there, and you can start typing in track here. Now you're going to see the track page view. You're also going to see the share object. Don't pick the share object here. That's for Apex sharing, which is really poorly named. It's not really Apex, but you can do some really interesting sharing using Apex sharing in Salesforce. Pick track page view here, the one that we created. Okay, then go down below that, set the field values for the track page view. Click in the field and select the date and time viewed. And then click in the value, and under the global variables, get the $flow, click on that, and then current date time. We're basically going to take the date and time viewed. When the flow runs, we're going to write the current date time into the date and time viewed field, the date that we created. Okay, now select add field again, plus add field below there. Click into field, and this time get the opportunity lookup that we created, opportunity $_C. And then click into value on the right and select under variables record ID. We're going to pass in the opportunity ID from the record, and we're going to put it in that variable called record ID that we created. Okay, now select add field once more. And now click into field and put the user in there, user $_C. And then click into value, and under the global variables, we're going to get $user, the runtime variable, $user, and then ID, which is going to be about halfway down. I'm not going to worry about the owner field right now. I could do it. We're going to be the owner of this thing. I'm not worried about that. But in a regular org, we might want to do that differently. So we should have date and time viewed is the current date time. Opportunity is the record ID. And user $_C is $user ID. And select done. All right, let's save this thing. Flow label is going to be track opportunity page views. Track opportunity page views. Then click in the Flow API name to auto-populate. Go ahead and open up Show Advanced. I had the slide on that. Open that up. This is where you're going to find the how to run the flow. We're not going to worry about it right now, but this is where you find that right here. This is going to come into play when you start converting, especially workflows and processes. We won't do anything with it. We'll just go ahead and select Save here. All right, so now for the hidden screen that's going to do the magic for us. Hit the plus sign under the Create Records element that we just created. Okay, and select Screen. All right, the label for this thing is going to be Hidden Screen. And click an API name to auto-populate. Okay, now below there, open up Configure Header and deselect Show Header. Then below that, open up Configure Footer and deselect Show Footer. There's a blank screen. And hit Done. That's all we got to do with that thing. And then hit Save, and you're going to get a warning here. It's going to come up and it's not going to like it. It's going to go, wait a second, you got a screen on there that's missing navigation. You sure you want to do that? Yeah, we're sure. Okay, and at that point, activate it. Okay, now let's go set up the Lightning page. So let's go back into the org and let's go to the Opportunities tab. I'll go to my Sales app. Let's go to Opportunities. Let's go ahead and put the all opportunities and pin that thing, the list view. Let's pin the all opportunities. Okay, we got an opportunity in here called Edge SLA, number 6th one down. Click on Edge SLA. We're looking at that one. Okay, now there's our related list on the right because we moved it to the top. Let's click on the setup gear in the upper right and then hit edit page, which puts us into edit mode on the lightning page. Setup, edit page. Okay, now off to the right, get rid of the stuff that Salesforce pushes to us. It's going to push a number of things at you. Just X out of what the stuff that gets pushed to you. Okay, so right now we have this related list component that it put on there on the right? Okay, what we want to do here is we want to get rid of that. Click the trash can on that related component on the lower right. Trash that thing. We're gonna do our own here. So now what we want to do is on the left-hand side, under all the components, grab a tab component and drag it over and put it where that thing was, where it says add component here. Drag the tab over there. Okay. Now on the right, you're going to see by default, it's got the related and the details on there. X out the details. Get rid of the details on this one. And, oh, there's a interesting little thing. We get these phantom looking errors sometimes in Lightning. We just did. If you got the same one, just X out of the thing. Okay. Now, click on the related on the right-hand side where you see the related tab. Click on that itself, and you're going to see an up and down arrows on there. Click on the up and down arrow. Click on the up, and you're going to go all the way to the top of this thing. I'm guessing that there's a bunch of people that haven't actually done this before. You can create your own tab names here. Select custom. So we open up the related, we select custom. And what we're going to do here is we're going to give it our own custom label here. Okay, so what we're going to do on this one is we're going to call this thing, what are we going to call this? We're going to go page views. Let's call this page views. So you'll see the little red arrow on there. Click outside the box after you type in page views and the arrow will go away. And then select done. There's our phantom error again. Okay, so now what we do is now we've got our own custom tab on the right called page views. So now what we want to do is we want to drag a related list single component right on that page views where it says add components here. So go over on the left-hand side and go get a related list single component and drag it over to the right and drop it right underneath page views where it says add component here. Okay, now on the right-hand side where it says related list activity history that it picked by default, click on that and change that to track page views. So now you've got in that component, you've got the page views as the tab name and you have track page views in there. Below that where it says related list type, change that from default to enhanced list. Okay, so now we've got that set. So now we're going to drag a flow component and we're going to put it above that component that we have there, that page views component. So go over on the left, drag a flow component and put it above the page views tab. So it's above it. And then click into the flow name where it says create a case, click into that. And change that to track page to our flow, track opportunity page views. So now we've got track opportunity page views, and here's a real important part. Down below there, you see where it says record ID, pass record ID into this variable, click on that checkbox. That makes sure that the opportunity ID will be passed into the flow, into the variable called record ID that we created in the flow. All right, save it at this point.
So Jeff, we had a question come
Activate.
in that I think is a good
Yeah,
time to ask now.
sure.
So Mark would like to know, do you really need a screen in this flow, or could you create it with only the create element inside of it and put it on a screen now and still have it run?
You couldn't, because the problem would be if you didn't create a screen and have a hidden screen here, it wouldn't run. You can do a record triggered flow like that and do something like that. But the whole trick of this thing is we are triggering this thing when they're doing nothing more than viewing a record. A record triggered flow like that, you have to do something to the record. You have to edit the record to create the record. The whole thing here is this is triggering on viewing a record. That's the difference here.
So basically you have to have a screen in a screen flow for the screen flow to run.
Correct. In this one, we've got to have the hidden screen. We do. Yep. To do what we want to do, we need a hidden screen. All right, let's assign as org default. We'll leave it as just desktop. Hit next, and then save it. Okay, let's have a look at this. Let's get out of here. Click your leave there button in the upper arrow in the upper left. And let's click on the Opportunities tab. And let's go down to an opportunity called Edge Installation. Click on Edge Installation. And you'll notice there's the page view. It created it doing nothing more than viewing the record. And if you go into the actual page view record there, you'll see the information there. User, date and time viewed. We have all the information there. Now, a couple things on this, what we just did. If you go back to the opportunity and look at the opportunity, do a screen refresh, do a browser refresh. And what you're going to notice is it's going to create a record of the track page views when you even do a screen refresh. Now, there's a way to get around this if we wanted to. One thing is you might not even display this track page views to the users. This might be for you, the system admin. You've got your own page layout you assign to yourself and you do this. But you could suppress creating another page view when they refresh the browser. What we would do there is we would, when a track page views record was created, what we would do is we would populate some date time field that we put on the opportunity when it was created. And in the flow, we would put the logic that don't run the flow unless more than 5 seconds, let's say, has passed between that date and time field that's on the opportunity and now, using the now function. So we could we could suppress whether or not this thing actually created a track page views record by refreshing the screen if we wanted to. All right, so now we're tracking page views. It's a custom object. Now we can start pulling up reports if we wanted to on this. But we have created a potential issue here. So let me go back to the slides here and talk about a potential issue that we may be facing here, and it's data storage. Think about a large org here with a lot of users, and they're clicking on records, and you want them to click on records. You hope they click on a lot of records. Well, that's data storage. And if you've ever had the price out data storage from Salesforce, it's like Apple products. You never seem to get a really good discount on it. It is expensive getting extra data storage from Salesforce. So what we need here, we need a way to delete all the older track page views, ones that are more than a week old or whatever we want to use here. It depends on the size of the org. We want to be able to delete these ones that are old. Otherwise, we could get into a data storage issue here. So what we're going to do here, we're going to create a schedule triggered flow to do this. This is what it's going to look like right here. Very simple flow. It's got one element in it. It's got to delete records in there. And I put in here, delete them when they're more than 7 days old. I mean, we could pull up a reporting snapshot on these things and do a reporting snapshot. So we're saving all the data in a reporting snapshot. We could do something like that if we wanted to here. But let's create this. Let's go ahead and do this last fix to this thing. So let's go back in the orgs. And now let's go to setup. And let's go to flows in the quick find. And let's go to flows. And let's select new flow. And let's make this one a schedule triggered flow. Select schedule triggered and then create. All right, the first thing we want to do is set the schedule. Click on plus set schedule. All right, set the start date for today because we want to see this thing work. Hit today, 2/18 as the start date. Now let's put the start time 5 minutes from now in whatever time you have in set up in your org. This is going to run on whatever the user. No, this particular one will run on whatever the default of the company information is. So click in the start time and add 5 minutes to the current time with whatever's in your org. So I'm at 3:37 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to go at 4:42 p.m. And make sure you pick the right one. I don't know how many times I've messed this up in here where I put AM in there instead of PM. Make sure you got the right AM or PM in there. I've done that a lot of times, more than I like to admit.
Jeff,
So I got 4. Yeah.
you want that to be 3:42 p.m. so it's 5 minutes from now?
Oh, look at that. I've screwed up again. Thank you. I'm an hour off. Thank you. All right. Very good. 3:42. Okay, now I'm good. Thank you. I can leave the frequency here as once. You would decide what the frequency is going to be. Are you going to run this thing weekly? What are you going to run this thing? We're just going to do it like this because we want to see this thing run 5 minutes from now. So I just pick frequency of once and then select done. All right, we need a resource here. Let's select new resource on the left. Let's make the resource type a formula. Okay, API name. I like naming formulas with a FX, lowercase FX underscore. So when I look at the name of the thing, I know what it is. FX underscore now. That's what I'm going to call this thing. FX underscore now. The data type below is DateTime. And then click into your big area below insert a resource and just put in there all caps. Now, open paren, close paren. Now, open parentheses, close parentheses. Pretty simple formula. And then select done. All right. Now we're going to add a delete records element. So click the plus sign underneath your start element and select under the logic or under the data, delete records. Get a delete records element on here. And the label will delete track page views. Delete track page views. Okay, we're going to how to find records to delete, specify conditions. And then click in the object and get the track page views, the custom object. Don't get the share object. Get track page view. And then below that, we're going to leave all conditions are met and as our logic. And then click in the field below there and select the created date. And our operator is going to be less than, in other words, older than. So we're just going to put in here, click in the value on the right, and under formulas, get our formula, FX now. So we've got created date less than FX now. So in our case, everything in here, because everything in here is less than now. And then select done. And then save it. All right, flow label is delete old track view records. Now here's what you could do here. Instead of doing like we did it, what you could do is you could use the now and then minus n over 24, which the n would be the number of hours that you want to back up. So if we wanted to back up 5 days, it would be now minus 120 now minus 120 over 24. That would back it up 5 days. Click in the Flow API name there, to auto-populate that, and then save it, and then activate it. Okay, now let's make sure that this thing is going to go off, because I'm always paranoid. Go back, hit your back arrow in the upper left, and put in scheduled in the quick find, and go to scheduled jobs. Ooh, we just made it too. There's mine waiting to go off at 3:42. One more minute, it's going to go off. That's where you see these happening here. So we know it's going to go off at 3:42. Let's go back and look at our track page views. Go back into the org, and we have the tab in there. You just got to click the more in the upper right to see the track page views. There's our track page views. So what we're expecting to happen here is at 3:42, there they go. They're gone. It ran and they're gone. And again, what you do here, we just did it so we could see it work here. You just back up that formula that we created, that now. You'd have something like now minus 96 over 24 to back it up 4 days or something like that. So now we've addressed the issue of creating a data storage problem for ourselves by doing that. And that's it, folks. That's how to do it. That's how to create we created the flow to monitor and record record views, and then to deal with the situation of having potentially a lot of records in here as people clicked around. We created a schedule triggered flow to get rid of the old ones, and you decide whatever the old ones would be. So that is that right there. Any other questions come through, Michelle?
Oh, you bet there is. So let's start with one. So for your formula, you're doing 120 over 24. So is there a reason you're doing that as opposed to just putting in 5?
Yes, because in a date time formula, that's not a date formula. If it was a date formula, I could say a date field minus 5. I could go create a date minus 5. But if you look at that in the schedule triggered flow, if you look at that thing, let me go back here. And you look at the schedule triggered flow, and you look at that when you set that up, that's a date time in there. It's not a date, it's a date time. And we're going to use a date time field. The way you can do it is you can use that minus number of hours divided by 24 to back it up.
Okay. So next question that came in, could you include this delete action as part of the first flow?
No, not really. Well, could we use a wait? Let me go look. Let me go look here. Let's see what we've got in spring 22. What tricks we've got. I'm going to offhandedly say no because we want this to run on a schedule. But I'm going to go look at our original flow, and I'm going to see, did we get? I don't think we have a wait element yet in our screen flows. I don't think we got a wait element yet. Let me go look. Yeah, we don't have a wait element. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to do it. You're not gonna be able to do it. This thing's, because we want this thing to run upon viewing the record page. So there's no real way for us then to be able to wait, the proper amount of time within that same flow. Other questions?
All right, let me dig through here. So we also have one comment from Mark. A handy additional field on your object could be a power of one formula for reporting. So you can include a view account either on opportunity or user's name to group your records in a more appealing format. So I thought that was an interesting call out.
Oh, yeah, you could do that.
I have a slightly off-topic request from Sarah. And it is the last question we have for now, so I'm going to take us on a tangent. Can you talk about that nifty launchpad on the home page? Because we haven't seen anything like that before, and we're very curious.
Oh, in my org, this thing. Yeah. So all this is a screen flow. And so this is really easy to do. Basically, what you do is you go first into a place called static resources. Static resources in Salesforce, it's just like the concept that on a PC, on a laptop, by far the quickest memory access on any laptop is if it's held in RAM, random access memory, instead of held on a hard drive. Static resources is like random access memory. So what you do is you go into static resources and then you put your image in here. I put a GIF in here. You basically go in here, put yourself your image in here in static resources. I called this home page, okay? And I could always change this now. I could change that, what you're looking at on my home screen, just by going in here and changing the image. So the first thing to do is go to static resources and then put your image in here. Could be GIF, could be anything. And then what you're gonna do, once you have that in there, then go to flows. I'll show you the flow here. And then in your flow, all you're gonna do is you're gonna create a screen flow. And what you're gonna do is just like we did with the hidden screen flow, you're gonna take away the header, take away the footer. And the only component you need is a display image. So you get a display image, put it on there, and what'll happen is it's gonna ask you, all you do is in the API name, that has to be the same name as in the static resource. It's the same, you pick the same name as a static resource. It'll even show you when you go into display. Let me go in here and I'll show you. I'll pretend I'm doing this now. I'll get rid of this and go and put my display image in here and put this in here. This image name right here, it'll even tell you right here, required. After you upload the image as a static resource, enter the name of the static resource and you put it in that image name. And then you can do the alignment however you want. I put mine in the center. I centered mine, but it'll ask you what the horizontal alignment is, alt text in case it has a problem, image height, you can set that, image width, you can set all that in there. So it's really just creating a screen flow without a header, without a footer, and use the display image to reference the static resource. So now anytime I want to change that picture in there, I don't have to touch the flow. I just go back into static resources and I replace whatever image is in there. So that's how that's done. Other questions?
What about the Launchpad on the left, the accounts, contacts, and opportunities Launchpad?
Oh, that I just basically, I went in to create a new home page using the app builder, just a new home page. And I just had started with a blank home page. And then you use the Launchpad, and the Launchpad allows you to pick whatever objects you want in there. You can put anything you want in there, but the component is called Launchpad. That's where I got that from.
Very
cool. So you just create a home page, grab your Launchpad component, put it on there, and then what it'll do, I think it's called Add Items. You click on Add Items, and then you're going to see all the objects in there, and you pick whatever you want to pick for that thing. Perfect.
So that is actually out of the box standard Salesforce functionality.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Everything I did here, it really is out of Salesforce, standard functionality. Everything on this homepage is.
All right, so we have more questions coming in. Awesome. Gordon would like to talk about large data volumes. So if you are keeping view history for, let's say, 2 weeks and you wind up with over 10,000 views across your user base, are there limits on how many you can delete at once in your flow?
Oh, there is. There is now that you've asked the question, I forget what it is. It's a big number, but it's buried there somewhere in the flow limits documentation. There is a limit on the number of records. I'm going to say, I could be completely wrong here. I'm going to say 100,000. That number's stuck in my mind, but I can't quite remember what it is. But yes, there is a limit to that. Just like there's limits in the number of elements executed within the flow, things like that. There is a record access limit somewhere in flow, but it's a big number.
Okay, so I just did a quick Google search on this, and the total number of records processed as a result of a DML statement is at 10,000.
Oh, it's 10,000. Wow, I thought it was 100,000. I'm off by a factor of 10.
It's just a little 0 on the end. It's fine.
Yeah, just a rounding error, right? Yeah, I mean, so what you'd want to do then is what you'd have to do then is if you've got an org and you're cranking up that many page views, you'd have to set it accordingly to set whatever your timing is. You know, if you're cranking out a lot of them, you might delete them every 3 days. And, you know, depending on the volume that you're going to create there.
Okay, Jessica, thank you for an update. Scheduled flows process in batches, and so the limit for scheduled flow records per day is 250K.
Oh, it's 250K.
So I think because it's scheduled as opposed to not, that batches up,
okay.
so they can handle more.
That makes me feel a little bit better. I picked 100,000, so all right, that's a little better. 10,000 sounded awful low.
All right, so next question that came in from Claude. What would you do to track accounts and or contact pages in addition to opportunities?
Oh, we do the same thing we just did, Claude. The same thing. All we would do differently is that we would display, we'd have the flow referencing the account or the contact, and we would do it like that, basically. I mean, and the one thing that we have now in sales, let me show this, because, you know, once you see this in here, you go, what? This is in here? Let's go in here. Ding. Oh, it's not. Of course, when I wanted to show it, I'm not going to be able to show it. What I wanted to show you is you can replicate elements now in flows. You can actually click on the element and actually replicate it. That wouldn't help that much here now that I'm thinking about it. But what you could do is, it's such a simple flow. If I wanted to do this for another object, I just create another flow on that object is what I would do. And in Spring 22, too, for the first time, we can set execution order within the same object. So let's say we have 5 flows in here on the opportunity object. It used to be you had no control over which one Salesforce would execute out of those 5. In Spring 22 now, we can set execution order. So if it's going to cause a problem, you can set your execution order of the flows for that particular object.
So yeah, one other thing to think about there is if you're going to do that, you don't have a polymorphic lookup field, so you would have to build lookup fields for every object you wanted to track, and you will run into limits on how many lookup fields you can have on a custom object.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think probably the lesson in here is track pages diplomatically.
Yeah, I wouldn't display this, Michelle. I mean, if it was me, if I was a system admin, I don't need the users to see this. I think it's unnecessarily using up screen space, for one, and 2, I might not want them to actually know that I can do this. You know, we're looking for user adoption, because that way, if they don't know this is going on, and I don't build in here that a safeguard for somebody just hitting refresh, you can game the system. So I might not even display this thing for the users.
Sure. Okay, so next question coming in. I'm probably going to butcher your name, so I apologize. Vuth. Can the hidden screen flow be triggered on a field change instead of just on record view access?
Oh, a field change? Well, you know what? Let's go look. Let's go to one of our opportunities. Let's go look at an opportunity in here. And let's go to an opportunity. And I'll go to one of these ones I haven't touched yet. Here's one. All right, guys. I got my track page view that went off there. Now I go to details, and I'll go to the next step, put some stuff in there, and then save it. And didn't do it. And also, I should mention that a flow, if you have a flow that's going to update the record, one of these records, it will not trigger a track page views because it doesn't invoke the Lightning page. So you could have flows that are updating the records, and it's not going to trigger the track page views.
So would you actually do this using a record triggered flow instead of a hidden screen flow if it only should be triggered if a field is changed?
You could. I mean, if that was your business requirement, to change, if changing a record was your business requirement, you could. You could do it with that. Yeah.
I'm going to tack on a question of my own on that then. Generally, what you would want to do is you would want to figure out if the record has changed. So what would you use to do that? Because I'm assuming most people would say, okay, well, did a field change? But then you have to literally check every field against the prior value. So what would you do in that situation?
What I would do is I would say I would use the updated. If the flow is run the flow when the record is updated, and then I don't have to do anything as far as the logic in there. You know what I could do? I'd want some logic. I'd say last modified date changes. That's what I do.
That's what I was thinking originally. Daniel suggested using field audit trail, and I think that's definitely a better use of functionality until you run out of fields that you can audit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd use the last modified date. When that's changed, then I'm going to create my track page views if I want to do it when the record is actually updated.
And then you'd probably also need to make sure that it only triggers when the last modified date is changed because of a UI change as opposed to any sort of data load or automated system change.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Dylan. So, can you choose to soft or hard delete because the recycle bin has a limit of, I think it's 200 records. And so if you were deleting thousands, you're going to hit that limit.
Oh, choosing between a soft or hard delete. In other words, hard delete is going to pass through the recycle bin.
I think that's the question.
There is not that choice available within the flow itself. So if I go into my org now, and I'm going to go into my view all, and I'll go look at my recycle bin in here, and go look at my recycle bin here. All right, there they are. They're going to be living in the recycle bin right now, and that's a good question. I don't know if we can I don't know if we can option out a hard delete like that. I don't know if we can. I mean, they're not going to hurt you in the recycle bin. I mean, it's 15 days, poof, they're going to go anyway.
Very true. Okay, so from Jamie, question came in. Instead of creating a new page view record each time the screen is viewed, can the date and time view field be updated if all you were interested in is the last time the page was viewed, as opposed to wanting to know how many times it had been viewed?
Oh, you could. Yeah, you could. Though, in order to get some sense of how many, yeah, but you could do that, but I'm wondering how you would want to be able to use that to really track the clicking pattern of the users to do that. I mean, you can certainly do that. All depends on how, what's the best way for you to look at the data that we're generating here and make a determination to answer the question, are they really using Salesforce.com?
Yeah, I think a lot of it definitely depends on your use case and what you're trying to get out of it. Okay, So next question from Mr. Wong. Is there a way to figure out, or maybe Ms. Wong, I guess it's just an L, is there a way to figure out in what order the flows, scheduled versus screens, are run?
Oh, the scheduled? Well, not really. I mean, scheduled flows are going to they're going to run whenever you decide to put the timing on there. Now, we can in Spring 22, we can now take any flows that, let's say record triggered flows that are on a particular object, and we can set the execution order on those. But the scheduled triggered flows are going to run on whatever time frame that we had set them up to do. But I don't think interesting question. I don't think that, let's say we have 4 scheduled triggered flows in there. Okay, they're not going to run it, we're probably not going to run at the same time. I mean, so it's kind of a not an issue really for us on scheduled triggered flows, because unless we pick the same exact time, we're always going to have some difference in the time that those run, which you probably want to do anyway.
Yeah, so I think basically what would happen in this case is, because this is a headless screen flow, as soon as you access the record, that screen flow runs and finishes really before the page even loads, which is why you can see your page view as soon as you access it. And so a scheduled flow is only going to run whenever your schedule tells it to. And I think the coincidence of those two things would be rare. You'd have to get the exact same millisecond that you access the record that schedule is there. And then, I mean, everything else is record triggered, and that's really where Flow Explorer comes in for you to decide what order they run in. And unless you edit the record or create the record, whatever your criteria is, that doesn't actually come into play.
Yeah, possible to do, but highly unlikely.
I totally want to watch somebody try and do it.
That would be something that'd be hard to engineer, but you could potentially do it. I mean, when you look at the debug logs, we're talking nanoseconds that are there. You know, it's kind of a difficult thing to try to coordinate.
Yep. Okay. So follow up to that. I was thinking in a scenario of 2 different record triggered flows, would we know which will run first? And followed up with, does that depend on the criteria? So, Jeff, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
Yeah. So in Spring 22, we do have now. If you have a record triggered flow on the opportunity object, and you have a record triggered flow on the contact object, you cannot set the execution order between those two. However, if you have 2 record triggered flows on the opportunity object, then you can now set, in Spring 22, you can set the execution order of those 2. They're on the same object.
Yep, the new Flow Explorer is cool, and I cannot wait for the next release when they actually will let you order them by execution order as opposed to alphabetically. Like, can't wait. Okay, digging through questions, trying to see what else we have. We had a whole flurry come in. Well, gosh, the praise is definitely flowing, Jeff. People think that this is great.
Oh, cool.
So I think for now we have actually all of the questions answered, which is fantastic because we're also over the hour. And so others may have to drop and get to their next thing. But yeah, I think we are good.
Okay, very good. Thanks for coming, you guys. Always fun.
Yes, we definitely appreciate you joining and presenting. So thanks everyone that was here. Thank you, Jeff. And there will be a link to the recording coming to your email if you join the session, or of course it will be posted to our YouTube channel when the video is done processing.
Okay, so, thank you, folks.
Have a fantastic weekend all. We'll see you next time.
You too.